Dankeschön. Danke dir. Die anderen sind blöd. Nein, herzlich willkommen am zweiten Tag auf der Austria Comic Con. Vielen, vielen Dank fürs Kommen. Ich hoffe, ihr habt ein schönes Wochenende. Ich werde mich bemühen, das jetzt wieder zu zerstören. Nein, wir haben großartige Gäste hier. Wir haben auch heute wieder einige wirklich coole Sachen für die Panels geplant. Und vor allem für die Leute, die sich jetzt denken, dass Energy Drinks eigentlich was ziemlich Grausliches sind, wartet drauf, bis jemand darüber spricht, der wirklich schlimme Erfahrungen damit gemacht hat. Bringen wir die Disco-Stimmung nach Valhalla. Ladies and Gentlemen, Georgia HIRST! Please have a seat.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Happy Sunday.
I just said, let's bring the disco feeling to Valhalla, and because energy drinks are something that not everyone likes, but you, I think, have experiences with them that are, lack of a better term, out of this world. The first film that Georgia ever did was called Ravers in the year 2018, where there's a spoiled, let's say, energy drink that turns people into zombies, which is...
As you do, obviously.
Yes, of course, yeah. Which is funny enough, kind of the same plot that was in Return of the Living Dead 5. And it's a very interesting concept. What can you tell us about that, especially since it's your first, I think your first movie project in 2018. How did you get started to the project, and what can you tell us about the film in general?
I mean, it's a bit of a funny one. I auditioned for the job as I auditioned for loads of things, and I just got told like a week later the director wants to speak to you. So I had a meeting with the director, and it was at Christmas time. So there was like everyone in the film industry takes like a good month or 3 weeks off. So I'd had this meeting with the director, which I thought had gone quite well, but then it was Christmas, so I didn't hear anything. And I sat like waiting over Christmas, like I just need to know if I've got the job. And then I got an email from my agent just saying, you've booked it, which was amazing. And then I got sent like the full script and everything, and it was a bit of a weird one. But I don't remember who, a famous actor gave like an interview to a magazine and said that every actress, usually her first role is like a horror movie. So I was like, okay, this is just the token horror movie, I've got to do it. But I liked my character in it. It was just basically about a neat freak. She's a journalist, and she gets this project to write about this these kind of raver underground parties. So she goes to one that goes like horribly wrong, and everyone turns into zombies, and it's basically about her trying to get out, but she has to face her like ultimate fear, which is of germs. So, I mean, totally opposite to me. Even though I haven't raved, I'm not a germaphobe, really, and I don't mind a party. So she was just like a completely opposite character to me, which made it really fun to play.
That is something I always like to ask actors and actresses. Do you prefer to play roles that are kind of similar to yourself, or the complete opposite as possible?
I think it's always nice to have a challenge as an actor. Every actor kind of revels in that idea that you kind of have to transform into something else. I'm not a method actor, but it's certainly like an exciting process to do. But equally, you know, if you get a role that you really can, if I ever get an audition, I feel like that character really resonates with me, or I can really relate to it, that of course makes it somewhat easier to perform. So for example, this role of Becky in Ravers, I did have to ask my sister, who is a complete germaphobe. I was like, how would you feel about this? And she would like tell me all of the things that really would trigger her, and so I kind of drew from her a lot. And yeah, I just didn't have a lot to relate to Becky, so that took me a little bit more work to like delve into that character.
Is there anything ever, a character, a type of movie, something where you say, I would love to do this. At some point in my career, this would be the perfect thing that I would like to try out and do?
I'm really torn between like a really modern kind of comedic English, like, I don't know if you guys know The In-Betweeners, but it's like a very kind of crude British drama, which that's just my cup of tea, like I love that. But also to be torn to play something like either, I love Marie Antoinette, I love the costumes, like I would love to play a role like that, like back in history, or just like a Marvel badass, like a really physical, stunt-heavy role. You know, anything kind of Superwoman, any kind of fierce role. I mean, to be honest, I'd take anything. If it was well written, I'd happily play like any character.
Torvi is a perfect example of a tough woman in Vikings. And I got to direct the question to the audience. Whenever you want to interrupt me and ask a question directly to Georgia, you have to know this panel is actually yours. There is a mic in the aisle. Da in der Mitte steht das Mikrofon. Wer eine Frage stellen möchte, bitte einfach zum Mikrofon gehen. Und natürlich gehört die nächste Frage dann immer euch. Ja? But what I found funny is you said most actresses' first role is a horror movie, but not most actresses can do it with a very famous colleague. And in Ravers, you got to work with Natasha Henstridge from the Species movies and many, many more. What can you tell us about the experience of doing your first major project with a huge, accomplished actress? And how did the first days of shooting feel for you?
So this sounds really bad. I actually didn't know who she was, but everyone kept telling me how much of a huge fan base she had from this show that you mentioned, and I just had absolutely no idea. So I had to do loads of research because I think I was told like 2 days before, this is going to be your boss in the film. And when she was on set, everyone was like, oh, and I was like, I honestly don't know who she is. So I did a bit of research, and then obviously realised she was like very famous. And my first day actually was with her. She only had like 2 days to come and shoot because she was doing something else, another project. So she flew to Wales for like 2 days, and she was there on my first day of shooting. So I was obviously so nervous. Bearing in mind, like doing Vikings, you have all your cast around you, so you never feel like so alone. Whereas this movie really was like about my character, so it was a lot of pressure. Anyway, she was amazing and so talented and so comforting. Like I just felt being really safe around her. And she was great, and we've stayed in contact since. And actually, she tried to get me on a project she was doing, and then lockdown happened, so that kind of sucked. But I would love to work with her again. She was really incredible.
What I also always want to know is, because there are individual preferences for every person, because you made lower budget projects and bigger budget projects, and everything kind of has its pros and cons. So with the bigger budget projects, of course, you have a bigger budget, more possibilities, it looks more polished, more astonishing on screen. But with the lower budget things, you usually have more freedom to develop your characters exactly the way you want it to. So what is your personal preference? What do you prefer to do, like the independent stuff or the big budget blockbuster stuff?
I think both have their good sides and bad sides. I really think it comes down to character. If you absolutely love a role and it's low budget, but you're like, this is going to give me a chance to play this character and to show my skill, and you never know, it might go to Sundance, it might go to any of these movie festivals. I mean, this is how Florence Pugh broke out. She did Lady Macbeth, and now she's in Marvel. I went to school with her. I was her house sister, and she's doing very well for herself. So, I mean, that just goes to show. She just needed that one break. So, I think it depends on the character. I would definitely do low budget if I felt like I could really show myself and my skill. Obviously, as you say, with something big budget, you know that the costumes are going to be phenomenal. You know you're going to be really looked after. you know ultimately it's going to end up somewhere probably quite good because they've got the budget, which means they've got the backing. Whereas if you do something small budget, you don't know if necessarily anyone's ever going to see it. So I guess that security with a big budget is a nice feeling. You feel like at least I'm kind of secure. But I would say both are really tempting for an actor. I mean, you just have to look at... I mean, there are tons of big budget movies that are absolutely shocking, like so badly written, but it pays well and it's going to get put in cinemas, so people want to do it. So it just really depends on the role, I think.
And let's get to your biggest success. Let's get to Vikings. And your father was an, let's say, accomplished writer and producer even before Vikings. But what I want to know is, at what point did you get on board with the project? When was the first time that you heard about Vikings? And please excuse me if this is a bit of a personal question. Did you have more say in your character, in your development, in the way your character is integrated into the story because, well, your family?
Yeah, so the first time I heard about Vikings was probably when I want to say maybe 18 or 17. We were on holiday in France and my dad was like, I'm going to write this show. It's going to be about Vikings. And back then I was just not interested. I was like, yeah, all right. He was like, so I'm going to write the opening scene. Like, what do you think could be in the opening scene? And I was like, I don't know. We all sat at the kitchen table, like throwing around ideas and stuff. And back then I had no idea that I would be so involved. But to me then it was just my dad was writing another project, and that's pretty normal. He would always come to the table and say, I'm writing this, I'm writing that. So yeah, back then I had no idea how how involved I'd be with the project. And in terms of being involved with the script, my dad was one of the few kind of writers that is super open to hearing people's opinion on their character. And he'll often say, you guys know your characters really better than I do in a way, and you know what feels right. So he always took everyone's notes. A lot of the boys, a lot of Ragnar's sons who didn't like their scenes would want to change it, would take my dad out for a glass of wine and a game of snooker, and then be like, I hate that scene. And my dad would be like, okay. So they'd take him out, but yeah, of course, being his daughter, it meant that I could just give him a ring as opposed to going through a formal process. I could just ring him and just say I don't want to say that, or I don't think she would do that, or can you add this in? And he would listen, but there were times where I suggested things and he'd never take them on board. So I kind of wouldn't know if he listened to anything I said until I'd get the script the next week later, and I would say oh yeah, Dad's written it in. But I'd never know. But yeah, I'm sure I had an influence because he's my dad.
The thing with the scripts is we talked to actors from big movie projects and TV series here like Game of Thrones, and some say that they only get their own scenes from a script, that not everyone else gets the full script of the episodes, basically in terms of confidentiality and something. Do you remember how that was with Vikings? Did everyone have the full script or just the individual scenes they're a part of?
No, we always got the whole script. And I think especially back when all the Vikings were in Kattegat and stuff, so many of our storylines were intertwined. Towards the end, we were all so separate, There was England, there was Russia with Ivar, and then there was the Americas with me and Uber. So by that stage, you really didn't read anyone. I didn't read any of the other stuff because none of it was related anymore. We all had such individual storylines. But back in the day, especially I'm sure season 1, where Rollo and Ragnar and Lagertha, it's all so intertwined. You had to read the whole thing because it made sense. It gave context to your performance and your character. But by the end, I didn't bother reading what was going on in Russia and stuff because it just didn't make any difference to me. I'm sure some people did read it, but when you're getting so many scripts and the script is changing all the time, you can barely keep up with your own storyline, let alone reading everyone else's. But yeah, we were always sent everyone's material.
Mm-hmm. And just so we get a little bit of a timeline, how far in advance to shooting do you normally get the scripts? I'm very sure that there are last-minute additions, omissions that might be even be made on the same day of shooting. But when do you get the base script for an episode?
It would kind of all depend. I mean, you'd get like different color revisions. So you'd get like a white script and that would go to pink and then go to orange and go to green. So these were all changes that were made. So like a couple of weeks before a scene, you'd get your script, but it would change probably every couple of days. By the time you get to the scene, normally it's different. And then, yes, sometimes on the day, they'll give you your sides with your scene on, and they'll say, like, this has changed last night or whatever. So they were always making changes, but usually a couple of weeks or a week. I mean, you just have to learn your lines. For me, the thing that, made it slightly easier was I would end up learning my lines, and then it would end up changing so much that I would end up, always having to relearn. By the end, one of the directors just said to me, just learn it the day before. Don't even look at it, and then you'll be fresh, and you won't have, you won't have to kind of have that mental struggle of remembering what the lines are. So I basically just had a look at everything just the night before.
That's another question that interests me, because for me, as someone who can barely remember his own name, how do you and where do you learn your lines and the script? Because that is different for so many actors. I've heard people wanting to do it in a mostly dark room. I've heard people lying on the grass in the sun. Some record their lines to a so-called audio book and listen to it over and over again. How do you do that?
I'm just an absolute freak, and I have like a photographic memory. So when I'm learning a script, I just tend to look at the page, and I pretty much will know it from then. It's so weird. I just remember where the words are positioned on the page. So when I'm saying my lines back, I think of the position of the page as opposed to the words. So it's probably short-term learning. I probably then don't remember those lines in 2 days. But I can listen to a song, and I will know the words by the next time I listen to it. I'm that annoying person with all my friends who are singing along to the song, and I'm like, that's not the words. I know all the words to this. I think that's just probably from practice, from the show. And as a kid, actually, in my English, we had to learn a poem every week. And then when I went to drama school, we had to learn a Shakespeare monologue every week, completely off by heart. So I think just that photographic memory kind of has helped me in life.
Mm-hmm. And yesterday on stage, you told us that you don't watch your own stuff afterwards, that you don't want to see that. I think 2 hours after that, we had Tom sitting here on stage, and he says he likes to watch what he did just to be able to review it and to see his performance, how it transferred to the screen, and maybe make improvements for the next thing. So I was wondering, you really don't want to know how it turns out, because I think that the look of a scene on set has to be very different than what we can actually see on screen, given with special effects added, with color grading, with of course, the framing, the cinematography. So you really are not interested in how the final thing looks?
So it kind of depends. Yes, when I started the show, I would always watch my scenes purely for that reason, because you actually just don't know what you're doing at the beginning, and you can't imagine how your face works. By the sort of 6th season, I knew what I looked like. I knew kind of what I was doing, so I didn't have that sense. I think if you're on a new project and you're a new character, for sure you probably want to watch some of your stuff back. The difficulty is when you do a movie, obviously, you don't know what you're doing until you see the movie. So you can't see, A lot of directors don't let you watch back. They'll be very strict, and they didn't like that on Vikings either. So occasionally, as it begun, I would watch some of my stuff just to see how I looked on camera. But by the end, you've been in it for 6 years. You just don't have that same urge to watch. I know for a fact Catherine Winnick has not watched, who plays Lagatha, any of her stuff on Vikings. Never. Not even a scene. I don't think Travis has either. So I think just because we were in it for so long, we kind of knew what we were doing. But I certainly think, in a new project, just to see how you're dealing with the character and how, you know, how your facial expressions are working and things like that. I think it is really informative to watch. And certain projects I'm sure I'll enjoy watching back. Like if I go to the cinema, when I watch Ravers, obviously we did a premiere in Leicester Square, so obviously I watch myself. But yeah, just sometimes, I mean, I just was on Vikings for so long, I just didn't feel the urge to keep watching everything. And to be honest, if I have to be really brutal, it's not my kind of show. Like I don't like that kind of violence normally, things. So it wouldn't be something I necessarily would have watched. So just because I was in it didn't necessarily mean I was interested in watching it.
And my last question is, with a big production like Vikings, when could you, if you would want to, actually see your episodes? Would you, like us peasants, have to wait for when they air on TV or are released on streaming? Or is there some kind of server or service where the people involved in the production can watch episodes as soon as they're finished, months before release? Or do you also have to wait for the release?
So as actors, yeah, you have to wait for the release. And we'd film a season and it would take another year to come out. So by that time, you've forgotten what you did. So by the time you watch it, it really is the first time you've seen it. The producers and the directors and everyone get their dailies, so they can watch all the scenes as they come in. And, you know, my dad would watch those. So if I was at home and I wanted to see something, sometimes I would watch them with Dad. But on the whole, no, none of us were allowed to see anything.
Oh, wow. So nobody is on the mic. Then I say thank you so much, Georgia, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia HIRST!
Thank you, guys.